Our guest David has ways of keeping himself safe on his explorations that will not necessarily be obvious in his discussions and the YouTube content mentioned. Knowing how to manage risks is an essential skill for anyone who is visiting different places and working outdoors. You must learn how to do this yourself rather than assuming anything from our guest's discussion and YouTube content. Fieldwork, including interviewing and investigating, needs careful planning to provide a safe and rewarding experience for participants. This includes following policies or guidance issued by your school or organisation, which are likely to cover requirements for risk assessment, supervision, and stating if lone working is permitted. Welcome to the Ask the Geographer podcast series, brought to you by the Education Department at the Royal Geographical Society with IBG. I'm Rachel, your host, and in each episode, I'll be joined by geographers from across the globe to delve into current events, publications, and research all tied to the fascinating world of geography. You will hear Simon interviewing with me for today's podcast, so I'll hand over to him to introduce our guest.
Today we are delighted to welcome David Burnip, aka the Wandering Turnip, to the Society to talk about his YouTube channel, where he explores different aspects of places and life in the UK, and gain further insights from his vast and fascinating wandering to many different places. Occasionally on YouTube, the Wandering Turnip expresses his dismay at certain situations with strong language. Teachers who might use this YouTube content should review it accordingly. We're delighted to welcome David to the Society and hear his insights from his fascinating work. Welcome, David.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Yeah.
Great. We're so pleased you're here today. And the first thing I'd really like to explore is that you clearly love going around to different towns and cities around the UK. And while some of your videos show examples of high street decline, you convey optimism and enthusiasm for the country. What would be your advice to anyone who hasn't travelled around the UK in the way that you have? What does it have to offer?
So I think that it's especially when you look at in contrast to the high street, which obviously has declined all over and everywhere has seen the effects of that. I think it's you only have to peel a place back a little bit to reveal something that's really interesting. Be it like say Stoke, for example, and the pottery industry there. Like you can turn up somewhere and you'd be like, oh, this is like a really grim high street, or it looks like it's really struggling. But then if you do just step a little bit back, you've got the pottery kilns, you've got so much interesting architecture that is left over from those days. And there's also like I remember getting there and I really wanted to find some, and then I saw some like little paintings of kilns around, and it's almost like the towns or the cities are telling you, oh, it is here. And I think it's quite easy to look for if you're going quite open, but if you go in just expecting the city to be the city like it was 20 years ago or even 30 years ago, that experience isn't going to be the same anymore, unless it's London maybe, where it still seems to give a full city experience. But I think it's few and far between of places like that.
Yeah, thank you. And I think we'll deal now with your fascination for chimneys. Tell us about that, and where did it come from?
So the valley I grew up in is from the textile valleys. So it's Yorkshire, but it also connects to Lancashire. So the valley that travels through was all these. Where I'm from was known as the Trouser Town, and it was just huge mills everywhere, all powered by the water wheels and the rivers. And just there used to be, I think in the town where I'm alone, I think there was something like 40 mill chimneys, and this is a small valley. I think there's only like 7 or 8 remaining now, but they've just been I've always seen them from like my school playground. I looked up and I'd see a mill chimney. So any time I went out as a kid, I was like, oh, mill chimneys, they're cool. So then the first video I did on my channel was about mill chimneys, and I never thought people would find it interesting because I was like, oh, that sounds interesting to me. And then suddenly people are like, oh yeah. And I still get it probably once a week I'll get a message from someone on Instagram being like, I've just seen this chimney here. And I'm like, oh, that's great. And just all over the country, which is kind of cool. But I think it's just a nice bit of history that I've connected myself to, even before I understood what they were, and they meant something to me, which is probably why I have an interest in them, because I'd attached my feelings to them before I actually knew what even they were.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Brilliant. We'll come on to talk a bit more about the industrial past in a bit, but just hand over to Rachel now to talk about the next stage.
Yeah, definitely. So our A-level geography students study places in quite a detailed way. They look at everything from populations and economics to culture, politics, the built environment, as well as the natural landscape. From your travels, can you share any example or two examples that you've learnt by being on the ground, things that you wouldn't necessarily discover just by researching online?
Yeah, I think, a lot of what I do is the kind of accidental stumble across it. And so if you take if you look at the Northeast, for example, the sort of mining communities and the sort of what's left over from that, you can kind of hear that in your head. You can go, oh, the mining communities got left behind after the mines got shut down. But it is actually only until you get there that you see the vast amount of places, just streets left empty, but also the kind of wasteland that was left over because they can't build on top of the mines anymore. Like, I think stumbling across that is something that you really just to see huge amounts of land that can't be built on because of the mines underground. So it's just I think I went to the last pit that shut down, and it wasn't even that long ago. I think the last open pit shut down in something like 2012. I might have to fact check that, but it really wasn't long ago. But you can go and look out and look over that, and I remember just thinking that's a crazy thing to just stumble across and see, and you can't really do anything there.
And on that note, how important are conversations you have with local people when it comes to understanding a place?
Yeah, I think again that's a big thing that sort of paints the picture of or creates the narrative a lot better than me just stumbling across it, which I do often. But I think a big thing is me just chatting to locals. And again, like, I think one of my most interesting videos was exploring a town that was an old mining town. And I stumbled across a miner and just got chatting to him. And he was probably 85, so he'd lived through the whole sort of generation of it still being a proper industry. He'd seen the collapse, and then he'd seen the collapse of the sort of society built up around it. And it was just this like really raw, honest conversation that I don't think you could have got if you'd have planned to get that chat with him. But I think just because I accidentally got chatting to him and he just kind of spoke it, it was really interesting. And I remember that got kind of picked up by a few, I think it was like newspapers touched into it, because I think the area had no attention on it. And then suddenly like my camera and this guy's words kind of created that's actually real. It's not just, mining towns are left behind. It's like, whoa, listen to this guy speaking and you go, that's really interesting. So I think it is, for my stuff, I always say, like, if you watch my YouTube videos, if there's an interview in it, the video will do well. I go some places and I don't get interviews and it's just like, I just know it's not going to do as well, because I think the human connection to an area is so important if you are trying to give an honest portrayal. Like, I could turn up anywhere and get my camera out and show it around and go, wow, look at that. But there's always going to be a bit of just me wanting something out of that until I get another voice in that can kind of either direct it in the same way or an opposite way. Yeah. It really does just completely change the structure of how I create videos or films.
Yeah. And how do you feel that person, in terms of the sense of place that they were describing, how do you think it had changed over time? And were they happy with the place as it was now, or were they disappointed that it wasn't what it once was?
Yeah, disappointed. I mean, the nostalgia that you could kind of hear in his voice to this heyday of how the streets were once so full of people and it was like a happy place, and the work and the sort of vibrance to it. And because, as I say, he must have been in his 80s, so 80. He'll have been born after the Second World War, or maybe even just during it, but very around that time. So he's coming from a place of sort of desperation anyway, and then to go into like an area of being prosperous, and then to hear him again talking about like, it used to be like this. It's just a life well lived, and to kind of tap into just that perspective on it.
Really fascinating. Do you remember where this place was?
That was Hordern in the northeast.
Okay.
In Durham, in County Durham.
Right.
A fascinating area.
Great. I'm sure that'd be of interest to our listeners to look up and find out more about that. I said I'd return to the industrial past. Can you tell us a little bit more about the ways our industrial past still shapes the characteristics of present-day towns and cities?
Yeah, I think a big importance of what still makes places really interesting, well, for me anyway, and I do think for a lot of people, if they kind of went, I'm going to go check out this place and see what it's about. But I think like Sheffield's a really good one, because the Sheffield steel is so like so important and actually so cool. And I remember when I went to Sheffield to make a video on that, and I accidentally bumped into the cutler, the guy who is the cutler, and each year they get a new one. And it was just this like wonderful random encounter where he kind of just started, and he was very over the top, and it was just great to see that this thing's still kind of held in great regard to an area. And then you just look back, and then the more you tap back, you tap into kind of like why Sheffield was important for steel. What was the reasons it founded itself there? Then you look in the hillsides all around and the ingredients in the land and stuff like that. But yeah, I think that's just one place. You go to so many of these different places. And that's my kind of thing at the moment. I've done loads of them, and I kind of want to find more, and I kind of want to delve into areas that I'm like, I had no idea this came from there.
Have you encountered places where you thought the traditional industries were dead, and you've then found examples of it still being alive in, albeit a smaller sense?
Yeah, in Accrington, I made a video about bricks, which I thought was a really good video. I remember someone saying, I can't believe I'm going to watch a video about a brick. And then they watched it and they were like, that was an interesting video about a brick. And I was like, thank you. But I think the Accrington brick, which was the famous Nori brick, the strongest brick ever, and still to this day, people try and drill through it. Builders are like, I just can't do it. But I went trying to find them, and I ended up stumbling across loads. But then I did get put onto it was a very different kind of brick, and it was modern and didn't look. But there was a big brick factory in Accrington, and they still do it, and they still kind of have this pride that they still do make stuff there. And it wasn't it's not this big employer like it used to be, and probably a lot of it is automated. But it is really cool to see it sort of like, I thought it was completely dead, this sort of bricks made here, but they do still do them. So that was nice. And like you go to Accrington, and this is a proud Lancashire town, like they are. I was going around going, anyone know where I can find a Nori brick? And like people go, yeah, come with me. And they just pull bricks out of random areas. It was so good. But yeah, it's like real industry, just still living on in like the people, young and old. I chatted to like an old fella who again must have been 80, and he was like, I used to work at the brickworks when I was a lad, and like we all did. And then chatting to the young people, they'd be like, oh yeah, I know all about it. So it's cool when it does really sort of shape an area and stay in the conscience of the youth as well as the old.
Yeah, fabulous. That's a really great story. And again, highlights how the past is still contributing to a sense of place now.
Yeah.
Very much. As you're saying, the young people are still, that's part of their thinking and part of their identification with where they live. I
think young people as well want something like that from an area. I think they do really want to attach themselves to something. And if you lose that in an area, be it wherever, I think you're going to get a lack of just wanting to stay in the area or give it the sort of, I think Accrington is a really good example of that. Or maybe like a bit off topic, but like Liverpool and accent. Like Liverpool's a place where the accent's actually getting stronger, whereas everywhere else is getting weaker, just because I think they're proud to be from this place. And they're like, you know what, let's keep it. So their accent's actually like just stay in there, which I just think is amazing to hear. Like there's a pride of a place that I think is really important, be it like language or sort of physical product.
We've talked already about a number of different places, and clearly there are some places that we come across and we'd feel, this is quite sad. It really could do with some regeneration. What's your feeling of places that you've seen in that respect? And have you seen any good examples of that starting to happen?
Yeah, I think there are really good examples. I know a lot of places. Barnsley's a really good one. Barnsley, which was famous for glassmaking, they've done a really good job of just sort of totally flipping it on the head, where the big old shopping centre, which the sort of in-city shopping centre where most towns seem to have one now that's kind of closing down, they just switched straight to like they're turning the NHS care, so making places available for in-town walk-ins where there's just going to be loads of things available for like flu jabs, just loads of different stuff that would have been needed in the hospital. They go, we can use this for it.
Fabulous.
And then again, that also creates sort of a central place in the town when you go, I need to go into the town to do this. Yep. So then you're in town and then you go to the shop next door that is still open.
Yeah.
So I think Barnsley's done a really good job.
That's a great example.
They did have, I think they had the sort of pride from the glassworks, because I think you take a place like Slough. I think Slough are trying to do a similar sort of thing with the big shopping centre which was there.
Yes.
I think they're trying to do the exact same thing, but I don't know. I think at the same time it's in like contest between just turn it into flats.
Yes.
Which I actually I don't have a problem with anymore. Like I think if places are left empty, I think turn it into housing, turn it if it's an easy way to do it.
Yeah.
Some areas, maybe Barnsley is quite attractive because of its location. Maybe Slough's got a bit of a less attraction because it's sort of so modern industrial, which lacks the beauty of old industrial.
Yeah. Well, I think what's interesting about Slough as well is anyone who's watched The Office has that vision of this opening sequence that is what Slough is like.
Yeah.
The Office was filmed a long time ago and Slough has changed an awful lot since then. And it is fascinating how that becomes ingrained if it is in media or popular culture or in TV.
Yeah.
Great. We're going to move around a bit now and talk more about physical geography because while your work mainly involves urban wandering, you've also explored some coastal erosion in a few locations. Can you tell us a bit more about what you've observed and again perhaps share some of the information shared by locals?
Yeah, so coastal erosion's a fascinating one because my dad was born in the northeast. So he used to always, like, that was where he holidayed, that was where he lived, like, he's literally spent his life all up and down there. So he's always had these photos of places on that coast, which is just, it's crazy how much it's changed. In like, you only have to go 5 years and you see it completely change. But my dad always had these photos of, this was when I was here and look at it now. So I always just wanted to go explore, always just wanted to kind of go and see the scale of how vastly that landscape's changing.
Yeah.
And there's genuine bits where just roads have collapsed away and just old bars and restaurants which used to be there, houses just falling into the sea. It's truly fascinating and scary at the rate it's happening.
Yep.
Each year by year, looking at the actual what the earth underneath it and the sort of why North Wales doesn't deal with this problem, but sort of Scarborough and all that coastline really does, and the makeup of the earth and how far that actually goes back. And then again, talking to locals is a huge one because when I go there and I've spoken to a few different people. And I spoke to someone who literally had a house and they were like, I'm not worried. Right. And I was like, you're not worried? And they were like, nah, I think they were quite old and I reckon where I am will be, it'd take 10 years to get to here. Okay. And I was like, only 10 years? I mean, and you can see the house from the thing and he's like, I'm not worried at all. Yeah. And then you get other people being like, we're pretty sure that if not us, the road near us would go.
Right.
So it's like, you can go, my house is going to be all right, but if the road to it goes, and it does go, I think I use my drone for quite a lot of the shots around there, and it's so insane just to see the it's like a shark's bitten out the side of the road.
Yes.
You just see this chunk going.
I watched some of that content. I thought it was extraordinary what you captured with your drone.
Yeah. And there's no defences anymore. I think there's no money put into it.
Well, that was another very interesting issue in terms of defences often were funded by local authorities.
Yep.
And then in some places, decisions have been made that they couldn't fund whatever project because it would cost too much and wouldn't actually have the benefits. But I think you saw some examples of locals actually spending money themselves on defences. Is that right?
Yeah, so I think a lot of the locals had done loads together just to do something. I can't remember the amount, but they'd put the huge blocks they look like giant Lego pieces, and they just dotted them all around, and that was all community funded because they were like, no one's sent us any money for this.
Yeah.
And then I think there's a lot of things where they're like, we're going to move everyone on the front. We're going to move you back 2 miles inland, where because I think is it Skipsea, the land underneath it doesn't. I mean, I'm not too sure about the rock formation under the earth, but it is something like a mile inland before it actually goes to a hard rock which wouldn't crumble.
Yes.
So it's like, if 10 years time, 50 years time, it'll still be doing it. So like, you've got to move so far back before it becomes hard rock that cannot erode, instead of just the clay earth that moves around, or the sandy stuff, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'll give our A-level geographers a few tools that they can consider using as a result of this conversation. Firstly, you could go onto the BGS viewer and have a look at the geology in some of these areas and delve into that a bit more to see, is it soft or is it hard rock? But also, as part of the ArcGIS platform, there is a Wayback feature where you can look and where you can see how areas of coast have changed over time. And you can also create slider maps where you can slide over and see how really it has changed. So do have a look at those.
Simon, I think that's great you started with that, because obviously we can learn about the geography and geology online, and it's great to have a secondary resource. But one of the wonders of the subject of geography is actually getting out into the field, which we're finding harder and harder each time. Can you give us your opinion of what's the benefits of actually being out in the field as opposed to just sitting there in the classroom, maybe using virtual learning resources?
I was always rubbish at textbooks and stuff like that. So I think maybe the wonder was always in me, and sort of like getting out learning was way better than me because I struggled with textbooks. But I think like you can never really get a feel for a place from just reading about it, from just kind of seeing the words written down, and probably due to many reasons like accents, if you're chatting to people, just like the way the hills are formed all around it. I just think there's so many benefits to just arriving in a place and kind of taking it in. And even you don't even have to go for what you're looking at. Like with the coastal erosion videos, like I obviously wanted to go and look at the coastal erosion, but then you also just stumble across so many other things that are just kind of secondary to that are sort of completely random to that, just about the landscape around it, which I found just really interesting as well. So I just think it's so nice to actually get outside and go explore place, be that for any reason. And just see what you come across. You can always, I find that half my fun is the subject matter of what I'm doing, and then just the random stuff all around it that comes from just being in an area doing something, and getting to see just so much of the country that I wouldn't have seen before for that reason. So
yeah, essentially exploring it for yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And you might entirely change your view on what the area or what you thought the area would be like. And that's happened to me so many times. I've gone, I'm going to go here, and you kind of have an idea in your head because of what you've read, or you've built up this thing, and you get to go, this is nothing like I imagined. And it's kind of like a wonderful challenge because you go, that's good to know that I can be right and wrong about stuff. You go, right, okay, there we go. You sort of completely flip it on its head, which is cool.
The whole changing perceptions of places is a really good thing. Yeah.
Good. This might be a difficult follow-up question to answer. But you've said that sometimes you go to places, you've got a plan, and then sometimes you would observe other things. What's the strangest diversion you've had from your plan as you've been out wandering?
So let me have a think. Strangest diversion. I tell you what, the strangest diversion has to be. So I did a video in Grimsby about the fishing industry, but Grimsby gets a really hard name for itself because it's a very working class town. It's very portrayed negatively in the media on every front. It is just, it's hard for Grimsby to do anything positive. And I've seen so many videos about Grimsby just being like, and I've always tried to be balanced. Like I won't shy away from issues, but I'll also, I feel like it's so easy just to concentrate on the negative. But I think one of the best videos I made was Grimsby because I went there and I really wanted to kind of stumble across I just kind of wanted to talk about the fishing industry and go, look at the decline of what happened. This used to be the dock here, and look at the high streets really suffering there. But I ended up meeting this old fella who literally, he was driving along and he saw me with his camera and I was down by the docks. And he was like, what are you up to? And I was like, I just got chatting to him. And he was like, I used to be a fisherman. So he was showing me all around the Grimsby and talking about how he used to be a fisherman, the years he spent on trawlers. It was so fascinating hearing firsthand from him. And then I got access to the fish market that opens at 5:30 in the morning in Grimsby. And it is this, I think it's the second biggest fish market in the UK, just after London. And I went in there at 5:30 in the morning. I had to have like wellies on and a big white coat and a hat. And the place just stunk of fish, and just watching this auction happening live. And I realised I'd kind of gone to be like, this town was once really famous for fishing, and I left being like, it still is. There's so much amazing stuff still going on there, and it kind of flipped it totally on its head for me. And it ended up being this super positive, fun video where I think, and I was really happy, and I got loads of messages from people in Grimsby being like, thank you so much for actually delving a little bit deeper, being open to it. So yeah, that was pretty cool.
So one of the big parts for A-level geographers is actually completing an independent fieldwork. We call it an NEA. For those who choose to study a more urban area, what kinds of things do you think they might look out for or measure when they're observing this type of landscape?
I think what's interesting for that, it'd be to see a big metric for me is always independent stuff. How much independence still exists, be that record stores, sweet shops, anything that you can come across that looks like it is existing solely for itself. And I think that's a very interesting metric to look at when you're in a town, because I've been to places and gone, oh, this place looks really good, it's doing so well, and you kind of look around and go, there's no independence here. There's nothing that is actually of like sort of individual value to the community. So you might just have supermarket and then kind of like
your chain stores and things.
Your chain stores. And I think a really interesting metric is to sort of go, oh, they're independence. And then once you delve into that, you can kind of, you can branch out a little bit further and then go, okay, I wonder where they get their stuff from. So if you chat to a record store, and you often find with people that deal in records are all, it's so sort of community based, sort of like, I deal with you, you sell here, and it's it really creates industry still. And I guess another thing would just be empty space, like kind of documenting. Just if you go to a main high street and go and kind of work out how much of this space is just empty and unused, and you are often like blown away when you work it out and you go, well, that's an entire building, like square footage of that is just crazy how much that is just empty. And then we're told we've got a space problem in the country. They go, oh, we haven't got enough space. And you go, well, we've got so much space. So I think that's always an interesting one. And if you were better at maths than I am, you could probably really go into detail and work out how much just empty space is left, be it in unused buildings, be it in empty flats, be it in shopping centres that are shut down. So that'd be interesting.
Do you think that will change in the future?
I think it's got to.
Yes.
I think it has to. I mean, there is only so long you can leave a giant John Lewis empty for. Like before, I don't know, before people go, or just rent in general. People leaving shops empty because they'd rather have it empty than accept lower rates, which happens a lot as well. People go, oh, well, I'm not going to lower my rent because then we're accepting that it's not worth that. But at some point, surely it will happen. Maybe it'll take a lot longer, and maybe it'll take interesting people to come in and kind of, like we were chatting about creative space and doing something very unique and different. But ultimately, like, I think that's the way it's going. Like, interactive things are becoming a lot more interesting now, and you do see them a lot more in areas like, be it like a record store where you can get a coffee, or like cat cafes. I keep seeing cat cafes everywhere, and I'm like, it's actually interesting. Like, it's just you go somewhere not for the reason of the city that you're used to. But I think it'll take a while for us to really tune into that. Escape rooms are great, like, and you can do really. I went to this amazing thing actually, which was like a scenario in a giant old mill in Manchester, and we thought it was going to be rubbish, and it was awesome. And you genuinely went through this huge old mill. And it was just like, what a brilliant reimagining of a space that couldn't be used. Well, you could use it for something else, but this was like, this is great. It was awesome. It was great to see like life come back to things that if you said that like 20 years ago, people would just be like, what? No, that's not going to be what the cities are going to be like. Yeah.
Really fascinating. And also great to hear what you've said about independent shops. And clearly people are now thinking very carefully about where do the products that they buy come from. And if local independent shops can also be part of a network of obtaining things locally and trying to actually boost the local economy in that way, it's clearly something everyone wants to look towards for sustainability purposes.
And maybe some of that stuff comes with a higher price tag. Yeah. But then I know these guys that make clothes in Hebden Bridge where I'm from. Yes. And they are like super like, they're super on like creating things entirely made in Britain. So they get all the wool from a place. I think they get the wool from a place in like Leicester. Yes. And they get and they've got like a cobbler who does all the shoes, and they support like a traditional cobbler. And it's really cool to see. And I need to do a video with them actually, because it's like you just look at it and it's like a pair of jeans, and then you go, it's like a spider web out, and it's like all these individual parts of areas that are still doing this traditional industry. And it's so cool to see. And it is a bit more expensive. Yeah. But then it's like, it's not fast fashion. It's like, you'll buy a pair of jeans and they'll last you 10 years.
They'll last,
Instead of buying 5 pairs of jeans, that it's like, oh, well, something's gone wrong with them. It's a really interesting way to look at it. But And
also we have to consider the hidden costs. Yeah. A lot of things.
Oh, absolutely,
Just because something, when we're purchasing it, seems to be a bit more expensive, actually there could be a lot of other factors that we should be considering about
obtaining
cheap goods.
Yeah, for sure.
So YouTuber features prominently on career aspiration surveys among young people. You've clearly found your niche by making content that you enjoy capturing that's also of interest to others. Exploring different places is what we can see you doing, but to my mind, you're also a presenter, an informal interviewer, an editor, a promoter, a creative director, producer, camera operator, and business person, among other things. So does it take a while to get established, and what other skill and time commitments are involved in your overall work that people don't see?
That's a lovely list of things that I never really think about. So it's interesting to hear it when you go, oh, I do all of those things. I think YouTube's a crazy one because, and I fully get, and I can only see it getting more and more popular because it's really interesting just to be able to do something off your own bat and just kind of create something and put it out there. I think the main one is just being open to a lot of stuff. So I've been doing YouTube since I was a teenager. So I was on it kind of just after it had first come out, or maybe a couple of years after. And I've always had like many channels, all unsuccessful and never got any views or subscribers. But I always just kept putting stuff out there. And I think it was only, when I was 30 that I kind of started a new channel and put something out there that kind of got views. But I think you've got to make stuff not because you think it'll get views. I think you've just got to make stuff because you want to make it. And I think YouTube often rewards that in a strange way because it finds an audience who goes, oh, I'm actually into that, but I didn't really know people are into that. Like the mill chimneys we spoke about. People go, oh, that's really cool. It's kind of the strange things instead of the sort of mainstream stuff you're given, going, oh, you should be watching stuff about this. You should be reading this. Like, I think YouTube's just quite a nice way to be whatever you're into. It's like the Francis Bourgeois guy. Do you know him? The guy that loves trains, and he just loves looking at trains, and it's just the greatest stuff because you're just like, oh, that's
he's
just
sharing his passion.
He just loves it, and he's just it's his passion, and it's so nice to see. And there's nothing more. There's nothing more to it. It's just a guy that loves looking at trains, and it's just great. But I think it's just being just find what you're interested in, and it doesn't matter if it's really random or bizarre. There will be an audience for it, and you'll surprise yourself how many people there actually are that are happy to watch you doing it.
Finally, what would be your advice for anyone who's been inspired today to find out more about their local area or indeed places they haven't visited in the UK?
So I think anywhere you are in the country or the United Kingdom or the world, to be fair, I think there'll be stuff in your town that is fascinating and so interesting, and it might just take one little reveal of that to open a whole world of exploration that you can go and find. And I mean, this is what I want to do. I want to go to all these places and find these things that are done. There's a place down in, I think it's down near Brighton, that is really famous for rope making, and I just know that I can get there and I will stumble across stuff, and there'll be all these examples jumping out to me. And I think what's really important is just enjoy chatting to people, because you'd be very surprised how many people really want to talk to you and like share their stories with you from place. So like it's a lovely thing when you do get to an area and maybe you've got, I want to find something out about this area. If you chat to people, they'll tell you about it. And sometimes I have to be like, okay, you've talked enough now. I need to get on with my filming. It's funny how wonderful people are just really up for chatting, which I think is really nice. So yeah, I think just go and have an explore. Like you really will find something. 95% of my content is based in the northwest of England. And I keep going, I need to go further afield. I need to get down south, or I need to go to Europe, and I need to do that. And I keep still finding stuff in the northwest of England that just blows my mind. And I go, I'll just go an hour down the road and I find something really interesting. So I think it's often, you don't have to travel far to get the best stuff. And I think you can trick yourself into thinking that the further I travel, the better stuff will be. When actually, I think a lot of the good stuff is right by you, and you'll be continually amazed by that stuff. It's really easy just to dig up stuff near you and go, and you'll just keep digging it up, and it'll be really good.
David, thank you for taking us on a fascinating journey today. It's been wonderful to explore with you various places, talk about all the things we have discussed, and to just hear more about what's behind the content that you produce on YouTube for your audience.
Thank you. It's been a real pleasure hearing about your travels, your channel, and the insights we've gained all along the way. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed this podcast, don't forget to subscribe to the Ask the Geographer podcast series on soundcloud.com or your preferred streaming platform. Dive deeper into the world of geography and stay informed with our wide range of resources, many of which are available for free. School membership grants access to even more resources, including online lectures and supporting materials for both teachers and learners. Explore our resources and discover our additional offers for education at www.rgs.org/schools.